Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us again today. My name is Lauren.
And my name is Asanta.
And Asanta and I are smoking cessation facilitators here with the Department of Community Health Improvement. And this is in partnership. This is our second Facebook Live session, and this is in partnership with the Baltimore City Health Department. And so for the next 5 months, because we've already done our first Facebook Live session in January, which was on New Year's resolutions and versus lifestyle changes. And so what we're going to be talking about today, we're going to get into in just a little bit, but we want you to know that these Facebook Live sessions are in an effort to encourage tobacco users to quit smoking, because we know it's a hard journey, and we're here to help you, and that's what we're going to do today.
So today we're going to look at diseases caused by smoking, secondhand smoke, and the contents of a cigarette. As we go through the session, please join us by adding your zip code in the comment section so we can know which side of the city and all around that we're reaching. And also leave your comments in the comment section, and if we don't answer them during the live session, we will reply when the session has ended.
So, please let your friends and family know that we are doing these Facebook Live sessions. You may not be a smoker or a tobacco user, but you may have a family member who is. Just let them know that we are doing these sessions, and once it's ended, you can always share it with your family members and friends as well. And that if you have any if you have any topics you'd like for us to cover going forward in our sessions, please let us know. You can comment below, like Asanta said, and we'll try and get them in coming forward in our future sessions.
Great. Now here we go. Let's get into it for this month. So, tobacco.
Yes.
Tobacco. Let's talk about tobacco smoke and the contents of it. Lauren, did you know that tobacco contains almost 7,000 chemicals when the cigarette is actually lit?
I did know that, but only because I'm a smoking cessation facilitator. However, before I took this position and being, active in helping people quit smoking, I had no idea, and we'll get into that further about why it's 7,000 once the cigarette itself is burned. But that's a big, interesting fact.
Well, there's more to that. So, of those 7,000 chemicals, 250 of them are known to be harmful. And not only that, but 69 of those chemicals are known to can cause cancer.
Now, you mentioned the 7,000. You say 250 are known to be harmful, but 7,000 are in one cigarette alone.
Yes, one cigarette. So imagine how many a person may smoke a day. Some even smoke more than a pack, or 2 packs a day.
That's a lot.
That is a lot. And 69 of them in one cigarette can cause cancer. All right. So according to the CDC, smoking leads to disease and disability and harms nearly every organ of a person's body. It's also the leading cause of preventable deaths.
And so now I've heard about diseases that can be caused by cigarettes. We all know about cancer. I'm aware of asthma, I'm sure lung disease because you're taking the smoke into your lungs. But are there other diseases that we may not know about, or different types of cancer? Because I assume lung cancer and throat cancer, but are there any other types of cancers or diseases that may be affecting smokers and tobacco users?
That's actually a great question. Cancer not only affects the lungs and the throat, but it can actually have an effect on every organ, from the head, the neck, the kidneys, to the pancreas, to the bladder, cervix. It's a lot. Cancer, it can affect more than over half of your body. So it's not only just lung and throat cancer, as you were saying. You also mentioned asthma.
Yes.
Asthma. Cigarette smoke can definitely trigger a lot of asthma attacks, especially in people who have direct asthma, or you may be smoking near someone who, secondhand smoke may come off and pose a risk to someone who has asthma. The fine particles from the cigarette triggers asthma attacks. So, yeah. But some other issues that pose from cigarette smoking and secondhand smoke affect your heart, your eye, your lungs, as we mentioned, and even your bones. One specific thing is that cigarettes have its own disease. It's called Buerger's disease. It's linked to.
So what's Buerger's disease?
So Buerger's disease is when the blood vessels swell in the arms and the legs, ankles, fingers, hands, feet, and create blood clots.
Interesting. So Is it possible, you mentioned that it affects the hands, and is it pain in the hands or the legs, or is it just something that you won't notice?
So yes, there's excruciating pain in the hands and in the legs and the feet. Those are actually common symptoms of Berger's disease, and there's also cold. And you know, when your hands and feet may feel cold all the time, you might think it's just something normal, but
I was going to ask that. I was going to say, is it possible to just disregard or excuse these pains that you may have? You know, I danced for several years. Occasionally my legs may hurt, and I may toss it off and think, oh, well, you know, that's just because of that. Or, you know, if for some reason, if you work in the factory industry or manufacturing industry, you do a lot of lifting and your back may hurt, and just you overlook these things. So I guess what you're saying is if you are a smoker and you have contracted Berger's disease and you're not sure of it yet, if you start to notice these symptoms, then you really need to speak with your doctor.
Yeah, don't take it lightly, because you can mistaken it for a common day-to-day pain, but it could also be Berger's disease. And Berger's disease is known to affect people who smoke more than a pack and a half a day or more cigarettes.
Okay, and now is this a fatal disease, or is it something that can be controlled?
So if you are diagnosed with Berger's disease early on, it's easier to manage.
Okay.
However, the consequences it can cause is such as gangrene in the fingers and hands, which would, can go into amputations. Wow. And then obviously the pain and the blood clots that will be in your blood vessels.
That's a lot.
It is a lot.
So all of these diseases, and like I said, before I became a facilitator, I only knew of a handful, but as you mentioned, in all of the cancers and parts of the body, and I believe you said nearly every organ of your body is affected by smoking cigarettes or inhaling cigarette smoke. Yeah. And so now that we've talked about those diseases, I want to go into just that, the inhaling of the smoke, but not only by the smokers, but by the non-smokers. And so I know we've all heard about secondhand smoke, and occasionally, you know, you may think of it just when you're walking down the street and you smell somebody who's walking in front of you, and it may bother you, and you just kind of wipe it out of your general breathing direction, and possibly, you know, it may not bother you any further than that, but it should. And so what we're going to do is talk about how secondhand smoke actually affects you. And so there are two different types of secondhand smoke, and secondhand smoke itself can affect you with all of the diseases that Assunta just mentioned. So keep that in mind, that everything a smoker can get from smoking, so can you if you're a non-smoker from secondhand smoking. But Assunta, did you know there are two different types of secondhand smoke?
I did. I knew there was mainstream smoke and side stream smoke, right?
That is correct.
Okay, good.
So mainstream smoke is the smoke that comes directly from the smoker's mouth. So if they inhale and they put their cigarette to the side and then they exhale the cigarette smoke, that's considered mainstream. Now, side stream smoke is the smoke that comes from the burned end of the cigarette. And so that's the smoke, though mainstream smoke is still dangerous, side stream smoke that comes from the burned end of the cigarette is even more dangerous because it contains more cancer-causing chemicals. And like Assunta had mentioned earlier, the fine or smaller particles makes it easier for the smoke to get into your bloodstream and your lungs and cause all of those diseases.
Yep, just like asthma attacks.
Exactly. And so what we talked about before was the 7,000 chemicals. Yep. Now, if you look at the back, if you look and you do your research, you may find out that there are 600 ingredients in one cigarette. So you may ask, how do you get 7,000 chemicals out of 600 ingredients? Well, when you burn the cigarette, there are chemical reactions that take place and cause these 7,000 chemicals to form. And so not only do we want to talk about how it affects you, but we want to talk about how it affects those around you, and not necessarily if you're the smoker, but say your spouse is a smoker and you have kids and you've designated a certain part of the house for smoking and the kids play in another section. We'll get to that in a little bit, but I want to let you know how it truly affects children. Children are they get sick more often when they're exposed to secondhand smoke. Yes. And they are possibly able to get more lung infections and diseases like bronchitis and pneumonia.
Yes. So, and pneumonia people with weakened immune systems,
Yes.
it's easier for it to wreak havoc on your body, and it can be fatal. So older adults and children, younger children, especially infants.
Yes. And I believe Asanta's going to talk about the infants just a little bit later. But simple things. If your children are coughing or wheezing and they're having these attacks of shortness of breath, it's not necessarily asthma, but it's just a continued coughing fit. That can be an effect of the secondhand smoke. And so let me just give you an example of something that we all deal with. As we mentioned in January, the holidays just finished, and so now we're moving on, second month of the year, and it's still relevant now because there's this other thing called third-hand smoke.
Wow.
Third-hand smoke.
Third-hand smoke.
I know. So we have to be mindful about these things. So let me give you an example. Say you have your parents over, and they came for the holiday, and now they've gone back, and it was cold outside, it was December, you didn't want to send your parents out into the cold to smoke, so you said, hey, Pop, you smoke in the den, and the kids will play upstairs, and you open the windows, and you did all of your refreshing and cleaning, and the family members go back home. 2 months later, it's now February, and your kids come down, and it's the den where a lot of people spend their time, and the kids fall asleep on the couch. Well, that same cigarette smoke that was once secondhand smoke has now settled in the furniture, the carpet, and clothing or blankets that you may keep on the couch. And what happens is that smoke then can be inhaled by your child. And I want to make this very clear. It's not like you knew all of this before you took that first cigarette. So please don't beat yourselves up. This is the information that tobacco companies don't want you to know, and that's why we're really here, is to make sure that you get this information so you know what you're actually putting into your body. So third-hand smoke,
So Lauren, not to cut you off or anything, but help me understand. I had a friend who was a cigarette smoker.
Okay.
And she left out of town, and I hadn't seen her for a while, and she came back.
Mm-hmm.
And I leaned in to give her a hug, and then, all of a sudden, I was just overwhelmed with this coughing sensation, and I smelled smoke, and I guess I smelled smoke on her, and she had mentioned that she hadn't smoked for, almost 4 or 5 hours prior to seeing me.
Exactly.
Gosh.
That goes into what I was saying. So 4 or 5 hours, you may think, oh, well, I've been out walking through the streets now. I've had plenty of fresh air. I've had a drink of water since then. I might have eaten or even brushed your teeth. There's still lingering smoke and cancer-causing chemicals on your clothing that you're wearing for that day. And so this is something that we want to make sure that you are aware of. And what we really want you to do is to learn how to prevent this. So other than quitting smoking, which is our number one goal,
yes,
we want to make sure that you're keeping your homes and your vehicles and your vicinity within the workplace, if your workplace has not already made it a smoke-free environment, that you're making sure your area is a smoke-free environment. And if you have smokers in your house, make sure that they smoke outside, and if it's cold outside, they can wear a coat or they can choose not to smoke. But to prevent secondhand smoke and third-hand smoke from non-smokers and the children and your older family members, we just want to make sure you're taking care of everyone as much as you can. And so I know we have some other negative effects, caused by smoking that aren't just necessarily diseases.
Yeah, so negative effects pose a major risk to pregnant women, infants, and fetuses, as well as older adults. But we're going to definitely focus on pregnant women and children for right now. So, Lauren, did you know that a woman that's trying to get pregnant, it can make it harder for her to get pregnant if she's a cigarette smoker?
That I did know. We know a lot today.
Yeah.
I did know about it being difficult for women to get pregnant, but what are the actual effects of if you are a pregnant woman and you do decide to smoke while being pregnant?
So it's detrimental or it's harmful to the fetus itself. You can have a miscarriage, a premature birth, or an ectopic pregnancy.
Okay, and so premature birth I'm aware of, and miscarriage I am aware of that. But what is an ectopic? You said ectopic pregnancy?
Ectopic, yes.
Okay, so
what
is that?
An ectopic pregnancy is when the fetus grows outside of the uterus during conception and fertilization.
That's probably not a safe bet.
It's not. It's harmful to the unborn fetus as well as the mother.
Okay. And so all of these things are an issue. And unfortunately, there's other issues that can affect once you do have the child. If you did manage to have the child, say you were a smoker before you got pregnant, and then you had the baby successfully for the 9 months or so without smoking, and then you decided not to breastfeed, and then you went back to smoking. How does that affect the newborn baby?
So the newborn baby is at greater risk for getting SIDS. That's the sudden infant death syndrome. It's the explanation for the death of healthy infants, and it can be an increase with a cigarette smoker in the home, blowing the secondhand smoke onto the infant, or being exposed to thirdhand smoke by holding and cradling the baby. Wow. So it's tough.
Okay, and this is pretty much a tough topic for us to talk about today, so I want to keep reminding you that it can be emotional. You may find yourself angry, saddened after the information that you're hearing from us today, but don't, again, which we said last month, which was don't beat yourself up. This process of quitting smoking is just that, a process, and it takes time, and it can be an emotional process. But instead of beating yourself up, just take in what we're saying and then evaluate how you can go forward to be a healthier person without tobacco, and how you can be healthier and help those around you. And so we've talked about all of the diseases and conditions and negative effects.
And now it's time to talk about the contents of the cigarette.
There are things that not only the tobacco company doesn't want you to know, they don't want you to know, but if you have it in your house, we're going to talk about this. There are several chemicals inside one cigarette that you can find inside of your common household items. The only difference is, when they're in your common household items, there's a warning that says, if you ingest this, call poison control, call 911, call a doctor immediately. Some of this stuff you wouldn't even think a second time about putting into your body. But because you may not know necessarily that it's in a cigarette,
you still smoke it.
So what we're going to do is just run through a couple of them to get you started. And so the first one, just because I just happen to love doing my nails.
Hold on, Lauren. I'm sorry to cut you off. But you might have seen this sitting with us since the last session, and we mentioned at the end that we were going to talk about the contents of the cigarette. So we have a diagram here for you guys today, so it makes it even more easier to see an actual visual. So Lauren was going to talk about nail polish.
Yes, I was. So that may seem crazy to you. Why am I going to talk about nail polish when we're talking about a smoking cessation topic? Well, because acetone, which is found in nail polish, is also found in your cigarette. And so just as we're going through these, think about the type of products that we're talking about versus what it's actually doing to your body. Not only is there acetone, which is, again, associated with nail polish remover and used to remove nail polish, as well as gel nails, acrylic nails, ladies. If you get those long-term nail treatments, it's used to take that off. Actually, that's right. I did have a story to tell you. I once carried, I told you I love to do my nails, so I once carried a bottle of acetone with me on a trip, and I had it in my suitcase, and that hard plastic that keeps all of your toiletries together from spilling all over, well, my acetone spilled and burned through that hard plastic bag. So that's just kind of a reality check about just how strong this product is.
Yeah, I have a story to share as well. I broke my glasses one year, and I tried to use super glue to glue them together, and it had gotten really messy, and I was like, I can't do this, but I researched it and found out that acetone can remove super glue.
That's
super glue.
It's a strong chemical.
Yeah.
Next, we have ammonia, which is a common household cleaner along the lines of bleach, and if you've smelled it before, you know that's something you don't want to put into your body. And going forward, we have...
So, arsenic. You might have also saw a dead mouse inside of our cigarette. That's because arsenic is used to kill rats or mice or rodents of that nature. And it is in your cigarette smoke. Also, benzene. That's another thing. Benzene is cement, Lauren. It's rubber cement.
So... rubber cement is in cigarettes?
Rubber cement. Benzene is an ingredient that is in our cigarette, yes.
Wow. That's just, I mean, let's just get through the list before we talk about how we feel about what's inside the cigarette.
So moving on, butane.
Yes.
Butane is a lighter fluid. It's basically the fluid that's inside of your little small clear or purple colored lighter that you have for any lighter. You have to have an agent inside of the cigarette to keep it lit, and not only light it, but keep it lit, and butane serves that purpose.
Wow. So then we have cadmium, which you can see right here. There's a battery. So the cadmium, have you ever seen your battery explode, and it's found in battery acid? So that white chalky stuff that when the battery's really old, that's what's inside the cigarette. So we've got battery acid and components of battery acid inside your cigarette. And then we've got carbon monoxide. And we all know what carbon monoxide is, but just in case you don't know what carbon monoxide is, carbon monoxide is exhaust fumes found in your car. So if you've ever been driving behind a big bus or a truck and they take off, but they're huge, so it takes them a minute to pull off, but all of that exhaust comes out and you smell it through your car and it smells awful, that's inside your cigarette.
Wow.
And after that, we have the naphthalene, which is a product found in mothballs. Yes.
Wow.
So mothballs don't smell good either.
They don't.
And
I'm sorry.
I was just going to say they are a toxic substance that you should not put into your body. And again, they're found inside the cigarette.
And there are about 3 of them for each cigarette, right?
Three per cigarette.
3 mothballs. And they're like a nice size, aren't they?
They're not tiny.
They're not tiny.
Little Mentos for you. And then we have another one.
Methanol.
What is methanol?
It's rocket fuel.
Rocket fuel. So you've got exhaust from a car and rocket fuel.
Yes.
Wow.
Rocket fuel. Not only to mention we have tar. Tar that we pave the roads with. So that black stuff that makes the road look all smooth and nice, that's in your cigarette.
You're putting something in your body that you drive on every day.
Yes. And if cigarettes is smoked over a long period of time, your lungs basically begin to look like tar.
That's why whenever you see a diagram of an unhealthy lung, there's a pink lung versus a chalky, charcoal-looking lung. That's the tar that's building up in your lungs, among the other chemicals that we've mentioned. And last but not least, because there's so many we could go through, it was just important that we mention nicotine. So we know that nicotine is in the cigarette, and it's mentioned commonly with tobacco. But nicotine is also used in insecticide. And not only that, this is another reason I don't want you to beat yourself up, because nicotine is an addictive agent. And so what that means is it's the thing that makes you keep coming back. You keep picking up another cigarette. You feel like you have to have another one. It's because within the cigarette is something forcing you to try and do another one, and do another one, and smoke another one. And so we just want to be mindful of this thing and just acknowledge what we have in these cigarettes that we're putting into our body. And so now that you've heard all this, again, don't be angry, but you may be, and that's okay. And you may find yourself emotional, especially if, you do have young kids or you're in that sandwich generation, which means, you're maybe in your 30s or 40s and you have your elder parents living with you and you have your young children and everybody's in the room or in the house. And that's another thing I forgot to mention with secondhand smoke is that though you may be smoking in the den and the kids are playing up in the crawl space, not the crawl space, but up in the attic.
In their room,
and their play area. The smoke from the cigarette, though you may not know it, it's going through the entire house.
Yep.
And so just keep that in mind when we talk about all these chemicals that we have here. But, what we really want you to take away from this is...
We want you to understand that the disease caused by smoking is there. If you quit early, you lessen your chance of getting these diseases, and if these diseases are caught early, so if you visit your doctor regularly and you work with your healthcare team, these diseases can always be managed, such as diabetes, high blood pressure, and other things, cataracts, macular degeneration. If those things are caught early on, it's a better chance of managing them before they get out of control.
Okay. Now, before we continue, you said something about macular degeneration. What is that?
So macular degeneration, that's an eye disease that's caused by cigarette smoking and secondhand smoke. Okay. It's when it's a disease that causes you to lose your vision over a short period of time. But it can also happen instantly as well.
Wow.
Yeah.
So we want to keep our vision, we want to keep our kids healthy, our family healthy, ourselves healthy. And so not only do we want you to know about the diseases, but we want you to know that not only if you're smoking, if you think, well, it's just me, it's just my body, I can do what I want. Just remember, there's secondhand smoke and there's third-hand smoke that lasts for up to 2 months to several months after the exposure to the cigarette. So now if you smoke on a daily basis in that same area, that's just all of the third-hand smoke just growing on top of each other and making it more possible for another family member to come along and inhale that third-hand smoke. And lastly, now that we've talked about all the chemicals and you know what they are, I just want you to ask yourself this simple question. Would I put nail polish in my body? Not on my body, yes, I'll use it to take my nails off.
Yes.
But would I put it in my body? Would I breathe in voluntarily exhaust fumes? Would I go sit behind a car and sit there and breathe in exhaust fumes?
Or would you literally eat the tar from the roads every day?
Would you do
that?
That
would drive on or walk on.
Yes, or walk on for that matter. If the answer is no to those questions, then the answer needs to be no to cigarettes. And so we're here if you have any questions, if you'd like to quit, if you just need someone to talk to. Again, there's always the 1-800-QUIT line, just to talk to somebody, even if it's just about this topic we've talked about today, to let them know that you are angry, you're frustrated, you're mad you didn't know about it, you're angry tobacco companies didn't make you aware of it, and that it's not included on the packaging on the cigarettes. And we just want you to know that this is not an end-all, be-all. There's always going to be help. So please feel free, like we said before, to reach out to us, comment below, and
we'll get back to you. But understand that this is a process, like Lauren just mentioned. It is a process, and it can be a long process when you want to quit cigarette smoking. Don't beat yourself up, as we're going to mention for the next few minutes. Yeah, we're going to mention it. Don't beat yourself up. Becoming a quitter is very hard, but it's very rewarding at the end for not only you, but your family around us. So like Lauren mentioned, leave your questions, your zip code, and we'll definitely get back to you. And we will see you next month on March 28th. I know we usually have these on Mondays, but we're going to have it next month on Tuesday, March 28th, and we'll be back to talk to you about another topic that'll help you in your journey to becoming a quitter.
Thank you.
Have a good evening.